Too many things going on, and good, good. Welcome in. Good to see you, Jane. Uh, Glad that you're also here. Good, fantastic, good. I hope you're all doing well. Um, Good, good. I'm doing good, more or less. More importantly, I've had some time to myself, which is, which is nice. I've had some time to myself, for myself, to just relax a little bit, which is always kind of nice. Um, yesterday, um, yesterday I hit a point where I was kind of, I want to say caught up, but that's not even close to true. Right now, at the end of the semester, I'm not going to be caught up until grades are reported. That's that's just where we are with that. But but I did get to a point where all of the discussion boards had been graded, and all of the short papers had been graded. The only things that were still outstanding to grade were, of course, the essays, which I've got tons of essays. I think 22 essays still waiting for me to grade right now. And discussion boards that students hadn't completed. So on Monday, I do my attendance, and I grade assignments that are quote unquote complete. The students are supposed to submit an initial post where they respond to a discussion board prompt that I have given them, and then they are supposed to respond to the discussion board post, the initial posts of two other students. So if students only have two responses but they haven't made their initial post, or if they've made their initial post and haven't made the two responses, then I don't grade their assignment. I give them until Friday, right? The initial post is due on Thursday, so I give them a full 7 days after the initial due date to complete it. Because if they don't do it on time, they miss the timeliness part of the competency. It's 2 points out of the 10. And then that's it, right? Then they have the 7 days to complete it late to get their full. Kiyomatara, welcome in. Tenekoe, good to see you. They've got the 7 days to get it back. Anyways, so until Friday, I don't have any more discussion board posts to grade. There are some other things that I need to do for one of my other universities, the not Virginia one. I've got to make discussion board posts. I've got to respond to students on those discussion board posts. But and anyways, long story short is I was able to come up with enough justification to convince myself that I was caught up enough that instead of continuing to grade and grade and grade nonstop like I've been doing for the last weeks, I took yesterday afternoon off, quote unquote. I think I finished up with most of my grading at around 11. I did a lot of other tooling around. There's a lot of changes that I am going to want to make to the next semester. I was talking about this on my last stream, that I was going to, I don't have the YouTube chat up, that I was going to redo some of my schedule for next semester, and I've kind of figured that out. For several weeks, I'll have 2 discussion boards, and then a week off of discussion boards, and then I'll have 2 weeks on, and then a week off, and then I've got my break in the middle of the semester, which is going to be midterm, and then spring break. Those are right next to each other in the spring semester, and then 2 discussion boards on, another one off, and then it's off, on, off, on, off until the end of the semester. Actually, I think there's 2 weeks off in a row that I have. Week 14 and 15, yeah, are also off in a row, and that's right when the application essay is due, right? So I've figured out a way to spread out the semester where I'm still going to have most of the really amazing, super awesome, highly engaging content that keeps the students interested, but I'm not going to have to do all of that all week, every week for the whole semester. I'll be able to do it and then take a breather, and then and it's really important because next semester 3 of my classes are all 16 weeks, so all of those classes, all of the assignments are all going to all be due at the same time. If I'm doing 16 week and then 12 week and then 8 week, the assignments automatically stagger themselves a little bit, so it's less overwhelming. But when all of my classes are all the same schedule, it can be a little bit more overwhelming. So it's going to be very important for me to pace myself and to have a reasonable schedule rather than what I was trying to do this semester. And that's really the reality. It's difficult for me to understand too, because I made the change a year ago. So I did this schedule. I've done this schedule for 2 semesters already that I didn't have a problem with. And this semester is the 3rd semester that I've been doing this model, and it has just been, to say it's overwhelming is an understatement. About week 3, I ended up underwater, and I've been struggling to get breaths of air since week 3 of the semester, and it's over, right? The 16 weeks. So the last 12 weeks, I've been just too overwhelmed. But that's all about to be over. Next semester should be less burdensome, which is good, because I don't really want to adjust my streaming schedule. I like my streaming schedule so far. I don't find this overwhelming at all. It's and that's a few weeks ago, or a few streams ago, I was hinting that maybe I would stream less, or maybe I would take a month off. And really, that's, again, upon reevaluation, it was really more just about me being so overwhelmed with all of my school stuff that I was at my wit's end, right? I can't not do the school stuff, so I was like, well, I'll have to not do the stream stuff. But once I saw my schedule, I realized that light at the end of the tunnel is right around the corner. I'm about to be all caught up. I'm about to have not to have nearly as much to do. So just by retooling my schedule a little bit, I will be happier. I won't have to adjust the stream schedule. We can still keep doing this stuff. Anyways, that's enough of me rambling about me. How are you all doing today? I'm trying to think of the stuff that's going on in the news. It's not good. We haven't had anything good news happening in the news lately, so it's tough out there. So thank you all for being here and hanging out with me, despite the fact that the world is on fire and falling apart. Today, as you can see from the title, we're going to be talking about dialectics, which should not be a surprise to anyone. That's one of the things that we talk about here. But my stalling for time isn't working because I haven't done any of the organizing stuff, my tabs for what I want to cover today and stream. So, so here we go. We're gonna start by talking about Kimitara's recent article. Hey, good. Go Surreal. Well, this is not the most recent one. You have another one that's come out more recently now, Kimitara. Isn't that correct? I think that one just dropped on Monday or Tuesday. That you had something posted. I haven't taken a look at it yet. But I want to talk about this, and I think this will be a good way to start the conversation that I would like to have with regard to with setting the stage for me beginning to talk about. I wonder if I can pull it up. The idea of leftist perfectionism. That's not part of the stream title today, and I don't expect that we are going to deep dive into that yet today. I would like to kind of briefly overview some of my concerns and questions for you all, because that's kind of how I think I would like to orient this discussion, is not me teaching you or telling you, because I don't know. It would be me imploring of you to help me figure out what's going on with this. That should do it. But I need to get the other thing out of the way. There we go. Right, there we go. And so and you can see that this is hinting at what we're going to be talking about later. I've invented a new word, which I don't think is a good word, and I don't think it's the word that I'm going to use for this idea, but I didn't have a better idea, or didn't have a better word for this yet. So, but we'll talk about that in a minute. This is the brief overview of the kinds of things that I want to talk about with regard to leftist perfectionism. I think that there is more. There is more of the conversation that's not yet on this outline, but I'm not sure how that stuff is going to fit into this. This is where I think that where I would like to begin anyway, with trying to figure out this idea of leftist perfectionism. First and foremost, what right, if any at all, do any of us have to police the thoughts or ideas or actions of other people or other leftists or whatever? What value is there in policing with the concepts as we understand it? Thank you for the follow, whoever gave me a follow. I don't have my thing open, so I can't take a look. Malevolent Minds, welcome in. Good to see you. Thank you for the follow. So the idea is, and this is real quick, right? So I'm still introducing the stuff that I want to talk about today in general. We're going to get to Kimitara's article in just a minute. That's where we're going to start. We're going to talk about this stuff that's on the outline, and then I want that conversation to move us over into this other conversation that I would like to have about okay, so there's I recently watched, I should have pulled this up. I didn't have anything organized for stream today. I bet if I go to YouTube, it'll be one of the first things that pops up. Dr. Fatima has a new video that they did. That would be top, but pop up. The ideology of STEM. It is amazing. It is a fantastic. That automatically deleted. Oh, okay. Well, will it let me allow it? Not without going into the mod view. Hold on, Malevolent Minds. You're a brand new account, so Posada Bot doesn't trust you to not be a bot. And I wasn't prepared to do any kind of modding stuff. I don't remember even how to get to the mod view. So terrible at this. Is it here? Yeah, I have to go this way. Mod view. Yeah, it didn't delete that second message of yours. It only deleted the first one. Okay. Well, everyone, Malevolent Mind said, "Hey, everybody, I see that, but I thought about told me it deleted it. I don't know what's going on." Anyway, oh, you all can't see the thing I'm showing you now. So, So, Dr. Fatima recently had a video. The ideology of STEM. Should scientists and engineers run society? Short answer, obviously no. And this is a fantastic video. You should go check it out. In fact, I'm going to click on it and give you the link for it so you can all
the philosophy of science, which is
please go and check out this. If you're not already following Dr. Fatima, do it. They're brilliant and make good leftist content, and they're really brilliant. And this particular video is really, really very good. Oh, right. In this video, one of the things that Dr. Fatima is talking about is has to do with understanding students. There's a study that her and a few other researchers were working on where they got a bunch of students together and they were doing experiments with the students and producing research on that. And one of the results of this, one of the studies Dr. Fatima talks about is the way that students don't have ideologies statically. They don't have static ideologies. That for the ways that they're I'm trying to think of how to say the sciencey stuff without being really sciencey about it. And I haven't looked into all of the science well enough to really know it extremely well. Anyway, so the general idea is that she's playing with is that it does not seem to be the case that students or people in general have a static ideology that informs all of their responses to how they are going to react or respond, or how they are going to problem solve, or how they are going to troubleshoot. That it seems to be the case, rather, that students and probably people in general have the capacity to shift not just their ideological frameworks, but to change their whole ideological approaches and understandings of the world in how they apply those ideas to their actions and to how they go about problem solving in the world. And this is kind of an amazing idea, and one that I don't know has been investigated thoroughly philosophically. So the general notes that I have on here, if I could figure out how to go back to displaying it. Right, so it seems to me like what we can do is we can integrate Hume's concept of individuality, that what a person, when we refer to a person or to an identity, right? So Hume's concept of identity is a little bit distinct from Aristotle's idea of identity, right? So Aristotle is going to talk about essential properties and essential characteristics, the form and function and how these things relate to the telos, and are constrained by the material, right? That's Aristotelian essentialism. Hume recognizes that the kind of identity that we are is not the kind of identity that can be defined. We can put a definition to horse and to cart and to democracy or other kinds of things in general. We can come up with definitions for these, and we can reevaluate the terms and the concepts and how we understand those definitions, but all of that is really semantic. The identity that you have is a different kind of identity that doesn't have the same kind of malleability that our ideas and concepts do, but is also malleable in that you are a changing thing. You cannot be defined, because any and this is similar to the idea that we were talking about with God. If you have a concept of God, especially if it's a capital G God, and you want to define what that is, and you have your God equal sign, anything that you put on the other end of that, or on the other side of that, will be deficient. There's no definition that you can give which will be exhaustively exact and precise about what that idea is. It's too big of a concept to be put into any amount of words. And the amazing thing is the same thing is true for you. You cannot be so defined because you don't have limits that way, or any limits that you have are your limits and are at your discretion, and you can adjust and change and flex those limits. But we've also got the conflict that we've talked about with identity before, where so no, not that you're not right for thinking about that, Jane. That's just not what Hume means. Is he's not pointing to the unique in general. He invents a whole new idea for it, and it's one that doesn't get talked about nearly enough in philosophy, in my opinion. Where it's what you are not only is not statically definable. It's not something that you can put into concrete terms, but it's not a single thing. because we have this conflict that we've talked about before, where what you are and how you are seen and understood is not entirely at your discretion. It's not entirely, you are not entirely free to determine yourself. So part of what you are is a relationship of ideas. And that relationship of ideas has an arc between you and everybody else who knows anything about you, right? That there is this I'm trying to remember Hume's language, and it's been a long time since I've read it, and I can't remember. But there is a why can't I remember? It's been probably a decade since I've read any Hume. So but there's a connection, right? I don't need to know the actual language, but the even the act of attempting to define by the owner would change the thing. Yes, so the definition is now out of date. All from moment to moment. Yes, exactly. Right. Exactly, Trash. That's right. But see, but it's not just a process between you and the world. Also, we haven't even gotten there. Like Hume doesn't even understand dialectical materialism yet, right? So we're not even there yet. We're still only just understanding the individual as distinct within a species. That is still philosophically kind of right, we're in the early days of this idea. But what Hume posits is that what we are, or rather your identity, what your identity is a bundle of ideas. And that bundle of ideas is comprised of a lot of different relationships. So you have relationships that you have directly to the world. And Hume is aware of this. Again, way before dialectical materialism, but understands that there are relationships that you have to the material world that don't have to do with anybody else. You get up and you make your bed and you make your breakfast, and especially if you live alone, right? You have interactions with your material world that are purely yours. You do have some of those ideas. You have bundles of impressions, is what Hume will say. There are bundles of impression that make up your consciousness. But that's not what your identity is either, because you live in a world of others. And you as an identity are understood by all of those people who know anything about you. And you are understood in a different way by all of those people, and in a different way than you yourself understand yourself. But your identity is all of those things, right? So if somebody sees you and they think back on this one time 20 years ago when you were a kid and you stole a candy bar, and when they see you, they see thief. Right? Whether or not that's actually true of you in any way that confers with your identity, it's still true. It is a truth which is true about you, about your identity, because somebody believes it's true. And this becomes part of your bundle of impressions. That you have impressions of the world, and other people have impressions of you. And this bundle of impressions is what makes your identity, the thing that moves through time and is recognized as Jane, as Matt, as malevolent minds, right? As whoever you are recognized as that identity moving through time as that identity. You do have power to define yourself in this Humean concept, but you still don't have total freedom to determine yourself. So, I didn't mean to do the deep dive into the philosophy yet. I was only supposed to be teasing this stuff yet. So we take Hume's bundle of impressions. I need to catch up with chat too. And we want to combine this with an understanding of Foucault's power knowledge to form a new idea of identity. But that identity lives fluidly by transitioning between different kinds of ideological frameworks. And so we're still just teasing. There's a whole lot to unpack. There. But before we get to all the unpacking, I expect today's going to be kind of a long stream. I don't think we're going to be able to wrap this up in 2 hours with all of the stuff that I plan to get done today. But we'll see. Cool. So let me get caught up with chat. Excuse me. Everything is a process. The only constant is change. Right. And yeah. There is also an external process, but that comes from us process. Yes. Ownness. Yes. Jane, that would be a good way to. Yes. Yeah, that's a good word. Huh. Every thought you interact with yourself with also changes you. Right. That's part of phenomenology generally. But that's different kinds of materialism, dialectical materialism, I guess. We'll also accept that same. It's just the language struck me as phenomenological. The process, the external process is the us process colliding with other processes, ripples in a great pond. I would absolutely agree with that. Yeah. And that's the thing. There are going to be conflicts when it comes to this, and when it comes to questions of identity. That's something that we've talked about an awful lot. We don't get to be the sole authors of our identity, and that's true in every conception of identity that we've investigated and that I'm aware of for the most part, with the exception of Immanuel Kant and the retreat into the citadel of the mind, right? That kind of, there are some philosophers that will make that kind of argument about your ability to be the sole author of yourself, but that it requires that kind of retreating from the actual material world of others. It's not a praxis. Right? The idea that you can be the sole author of your own identity is not a philosophical idea that plays out in practice, in the real world. There, that's better. But that's me teasing where we're gonna go. Those are the things that I want to talk about today. Let's get started with the article. And I should probably grab a snack. Hey, I've got a snack. Does anybody want I don't know, does anybody want to write this down or keep this in mind for later? We're going to come back and talk about this again after we do Kai Matara's article. So we'll just put a pin in that and come back to that later. That's not the button I want. Well, the button I want should be showing you the thing I want to show you. Oh, there we go. I see. Oh, and let me copy and paste this. Anyone that would like to follow along, what's going on here? Copy, paste. I know how basic commands work. All right, cool. Right. But this is, keep in mind, everyone, this is Kaimatara's old account. If you're still in chat, if you want to, Kaimatara, if you want to post your new link, that would be fantastic. But this is the link to the article, which was posted on their old account. And I'm going to let it play. And I don't know. We'll see. I might let the whole thing play before I interrupt it, but you know me. We'll see. We'll see if I can keep my mouth shut for the whole thing. Thank you.
Ghosts are real. You are holding one. A look at how the traces of human life linger in objects, creating ghosts that haunt our modern world. By Kaimatara. I see my ghost everywhere. I see its rectangular shape glowing in people's hands. It is smooth yet permanently indented by my fingers. It is worshipped. But the worship is not of me. They don't even see me. My ghost travels the earth while I toil, unnoticed, disregarded. To many, 2020 to 2021 was an unprecedented time. A new virus, lockdowns, mask requirements, and I would be putting social distancing here, but the thing is, the society we live in had functioned on and normalized social distancing long before COVID, just in a different form. This thought came to me when watching the TV show Chernobyl. In it, there is an unmistakable loudness. You'd be forgiven for thinking that I'm talking about from the explosion or the subsequent response. However, the loudness I am referring to is immediately after the evacuation of Pripyat. Thanks for reading. Subscribe for free to receive new posts and support my work. Once the buses had evacuated much of the population, the camera looks on some abandoned apartment blocks. It pulls back slowly, looking back on the city as if it were too evacuating, with every increment of distance revealing hollow apartments and streets once bustling with people. Almost immediately after the town was evacuated, the emptiness felt so full. I thought to myself, this is a ghost town, but then the thought stopped me in my tracks. Why is it a ghost town? Many people had died from the radiation of Chernobyl, yet it was only through the absence of the still living that it became a ghost town. The way we think of ghosts is backwards. It is easy to mistake ghosts for death. Many of us grew up watching Casper or Ghostbusters, where the ghosts appeared as spectral entities after death. For Casper, it was Casper McFadden, who was a boy who died from pneumonia after playing outside in the cold. In Ghostbusters, it was many people around the city. So ghosts can only exist if someone has died, right? Not really. One can be very much alive and still be a ghost. The concept of a ghost town, far from being a semantic thing, is a good example of why. Ghosts are not created solely from the dead, but from a residue of life that interacted with the world. This can include the dead, but it can just as much include the living. Death is just the moment where the life that produced the residue is no longer present to hold it together. In other words, ghosts exist not after death, but after life. Capitalism and depersonalization. Sometimes, when my disability flares up, I get bouts of depersonalization, where I feel outside of my body. The best way to describe it is it feels as if you have stepped out of your body and become a reflection in a mirror. Though you move just as your body does, you can only really observe yourself because the space you inhabit is flat and limited. It is a very uncomfortable feeling. It feels like my life is happening somewhere else and I'm just watching. Often, to keep myself grounded during depersonalization bouts I read. In my most recent bout, I was reading Capitalist Realism by Mark Fisher, and I found him connecting many mental and physical health issues with capitalism, and how capitalism upholds them incredibly illuminating. This made me interpret my own depersonalization through the lens of capitalism, wondering, what would depersonalization as capitalism be/feel like? It didn't take me long to realize. The answer was in the palm of my hand, my phone. This thing traveled continents to get to me. It almost takes on a life of its own. And yet, whoever made it is likely trapped, be they in the factories who make it, or the minds who gather the natural material to put it together. Like me observing myself from my reflection, they are watching a residue of their life. Products of their labor become estranged to them, while they themselves are limited to the assembly line or the mine. And then I started realizing it everywhere. Depersonalization is not simply a glitch in my psyche, but a structural condition of capitalism.
And I think that this is a fantastic realization, a great way that you've led up to that realization. And I think you've done so in a way that is very humanizing of this reality, right? And I think it's one that will strike a chord with a lot of readers that are going to feel this way, right? That they feel this kind of way about something, right? But they can't put their words to it. And then when they get to here, they're going to be like, oh, okay, that is kind of how I feel, and now I've got words for it. Gender dysphoria would also be a ghost experience as well. I think that that's absolutely true. Yes, malevolent minds by design, 100%. And that's I like that Trashdomancer and Curse Chaos are already taking this to the next level, right? Already next stepping how we think about this, right? So that with Trashdomancer, that is one way that we might think about one becoming a ghost, where they are still alive, but alienated in a detached, hermited away kind of way. But it's also as true for hundreds of people that are together, right? Not at all hermited away, hundreds of people, but are all together in an exploitative situation where they have to go and mine cobalt so that their families can have a meal today, right? And it is the same kind of alienation, right? Even though it's not at all the same kind of alienation. It's a completely different manifestation of it, but it's also still the same thing, maybe in different degrees though. But gender dysphoria, I think, also is the same kind of it exists in the same kind of way. Right, gender dysphoria is feeling detached from your internal sense of gender. I think about too people who look at the gender binary and are dissatisfied with the two options and think to themselves, well, how can it be if there are only the two options, right? And beings, it's not simply alienated from one's self or what one wants. It's being cut off from the knowledge or the understanding or from the opportunity, or right, to be completely well, another way that we might compare it is people who don't want to cling to whiteness but don't know what their actual cultural heritage is, who don't know where their ancestors hail from, who don't have land that is associated with their ways of living and their cultural values and ideals, right? To not have the kind of cultural connection or the history, and it's again not the same thing, but it is also the same kind of thing, right? For as a hermit, even when I leave my house, I need to leave myself behind, donning the mask of society. Well, that's a really good imagery too, so as to not be consumed or destroyed. There's almost an Eleanor Rigby aspect to the way that you phrased that and the way that the imagery, right? Eleanor Rigby keeps her face in a jar by the door. Yeah, good. I'll let the article keep playing.
Under capitalism, when we see a phone, we mostly consider its price, sometimes even the materials that go into it, but we often do not consider the labor that went into it, that very residue of human life that produced it. We don't consider their living situation, their life expenses, the work conditions they live under, their health, none of it, and because of this, the product or commodity takes on a life of its own, a vessel of social energy traveling far more freely than the people who toiled to make it. Why did so many of our ancestors believe in spirits not that long ago? Most people mistake spirits as being akin to a childlike naivety, much like the imaginary friend many of us had as kids. But these are not naive illusions, they are manifestations of relations, whether positive or negative. For us as children, our imaginary friends were manifestations of agency and social attention, because for us, objects and games carried meaning beyond utility. A swing does not simply move you back and forth, it helps you fly. The relational connection becomes emergent. But, once children enter into the capitalist framework, they are socially distanced from many of these relational connections, where objects become commodities and play is mediated by purchased products rather than relational invention. The same logic goes for our ancestors. We believed in Tanoa not because we were naive, but because we were not atomized as we are under capitalism. This is why capitalism, and especially neoliberal capitalism, seeks to establish itself as the end of history, as it does not want anyone to imagine a better world. Relational connections are a threat to capitalism. Estrangement and alienation are what it relies on. And this is what creates ghosts, spirits separated from the people they used to connect to.
I might go back and replay that whole section again. But first, I've got some things to say. So I was watching Struggle 4 this morning. Now that I have a little bit of time to myself and I've been able to catch my breath, I can catch some of my streamers every now and then. But I was watching Struggle 4 this morning, and they were talking about all of the people that were implicated in the Epstein stuff that's being released. And the thing that kept coming back up was all of the Ivy League graduates, all of the people with all of the really highest credentials. You know, people that went to Harvard, and it's there seems to be a lot of correlation between Harvard graduates and people associated with Epstein, right? And it's not accidental. There's a very good reason. Yes, it's the elites. Harvard is a school for the elites. And one of the things that this ties in to with that video that I linked from Dr. Fatima. So this ties in perfectly. It's the same thing, because Dr. Fatima is talking about how people become the kinds of problem solvers who will think about qualitative or quantitative results and maximizing efficiency as strategies for human problem solving, when those kinds of things are, on the face of them, wholly dehumanizing and often immoral in the way that they're structured and organized and those kinds of mechanisms. And that is how people are taught to think when they go to university. This is something that I literally contend with every day in my job, is that on the one hand, I'm supposed to be training my students to be effective employees, despite the fact that that is completely antithetical to living a reflective, creative, authentic life, right? Those two ideas are entirely, wholly incompatible. But it also has to do with, and this ties into where I want to go today, with people's ability to shift between different ideological frameworks and the ones that people by habit default to. Because when it comes to problem solving, when it comes to figuring out politics, and when it comes to figuring out government, usually there's a systematic approach that we would employ. And that systematic approach is tied directly to the dogmatic pedagogies of our education system, which we all know is fucking trash, right? Let's all not forget the fact that we all know that the education that you got when you were getting an education was fucking garbage, right? Let's just all take a moment to remember the fact that we all know incontrovertibly that our education system is absolutely fucking garbage. But when we think about how we're going to problem solve, how we're going to organize society, how we are going to mechanize our government and mechanize our society, we look to the same dog shit solutions that we know were fucking trash. When we were kids, when we were children, we knew that what we were being taught was trash. But we're trained and conditioned to think that way and then to employ those strategies of thinking, despite the fact that we also understand that they are dehumanizing, that they are not moral, that they only reify the systems of oppression, the systems of hierarchy, the systems of authority that we all, as children, knew were not good ideas. So I just got a little bit excited there. Didn't mean to get so worked up, but not only dehumanizing and immoral, but ultimately self-defeatist, right? I didn't fail any of my classes. The classes failed me. 100%. 100%. You didn't fail any of your classes. Your classes failed you. That is what, as an academic instructor whose job is to literally do that, you are 100% right. Especially replacing people with AI. Short term makes pennies more for the stockholders, but once we replace humans with AI, then there will be no one left to buy your products. But they will not think it all the way through. Right, well, I mean, capitalists don't. Capitalists have to believe that there is always a horizon, that they can go and exploit something more tomorrow. Right? That's the ideology of capitalists. There must always be some other place that we can go and exploit. There must. There needs to be. We'll invent one. And the fact that horizon is now in our own homes, right? And that's people who if I don't know if anybody here is older. But if for those of you with an older perspective that have been around for decades and decades and decades, there's where was I going to go with this? I was worried about making an ageist comment, and then I forgot what I was saying. Replacing people, blah blah. Humans, and then when left to buy your products, they don't think about it. They don't think about. Oh, right. Those of us who have a longer historical perspective, we for most of our lives have enjoyed a lot of privilege being in the imperial core. So those nations, the richest nations of those in the world, are part of the imperial core. And for most of Western history, for the last few thousand years, those imperialist nations have been able to make sure that the horizon of exploitation always stays over there, in some other country, right? For most of the history that this has been going on, most of that horizon of exploitation is always over there, and it's always existed. But now that horizon of exploitation has turned back into our own homes, not just in our own country, right? And the white supremacists didn't mind when this stuff was invading our country, and it started becoming a problem for the poors, because all of the white supremacists supposed that all of the poors were all people of color, not recognizing that they're fucking poor too, and are now going to be disadvantaged by all of the things that they thought were going to work to help rig the system in their favor, right? So for most of the people who have been in the imperial core, they've got this perspective. They have this perspective where there is always a horizon. We'll just find somebody else to exploit. The younger generations now, who don't have that historical perspective, don't see that. Younger people don't see the exploitative machine of capitalism as being something which exploits that horizon over there. They understand that capitalism is exploiting them, and their family, and their friends, and everyone they care about, right? And it's a very interesting thing to be an instructor and to see that divide, right? There is a very clear divide in how my students understand their own situation within capitalism. And most of my older students still have this perspective of capitalism. Well, it's just that we're not managing it properly, is what they'll say. It's just that we have a few bad apples who have done a few corrupt things. We can turn this exploitation around so that it goes back to just being exploiting them, right? And there has to be some kind of recognition, right? Some kind of strategic ignorance at play here for the ideology of capitalism, for these people to still think that it's going to be okay as long as this is just somebody over there that we're exploiting, somebody in Africa or somebody in Somalia or somebody in some other country that I don't care about, right? It doesn't matter because I'm a white supremacist, and those people in that country that I assume everybody's not white in that country anyway, I don't care. But now, the younger generation, they get it. They understand that the exploitation of capitalism is them. It's in their house. Had a fun line in chat yesterday. We should all be presidents. My kindergarten teacher was right. I grew up in the era where there was maybe a bit too much negative positivity, yes. And teachers would say that any of the students would grow up to be president, and yeah, sort of true, but so is the chance of winning the lottery. Well, and I would push back on this, Trashnomancer. I actually bring this up an awful lot in the classroom. It is not the case that anybody can be the president, even in theory. It is not the case that this is. We've talked about the way that we program our children is completely backwards, right? We convince our children that they can be the president, or that they can be an astronaut, or that they can be a pilot, despite the fact that they probably can't. Those are niche jobs that require specialization and a certain kind of person and talent. Not everybody can do those things. And it's foolish for us to tell our kids that anybody can do those. But We also tell our kids problems like world hunger aren't solvable. We can't figure out the problem of homelessness. We can't figure out all of these really tough problems with environmentalism, right? We are lying to our children in all of the most backwards ways, right? Maintaining this idea that Santa Claus is a real thing to maintain some kind of innocence in our childhood. No, you're just lying to your children about where fucking stuff comes from, right? That's capitalist commodity fetishism. In case that wasn't clear to you, this holiday season, when people are talking about gift exchange, don't forget to remind everybody that the whole idea of Santa Claus is to erase in children's minds the idea that their toys come from the exploitation of other children. Right? That's literally what Santa Claus, the myth of Santa Claus, was cooked up to hide. The fact that the toys that you are buying for your children are made by children in other countries who are being exploited by slave labor. That's what Santa Claus represents. Quite literally. Police brutality has reached the rich Euro-Americans, and they have no idea what happened. Yes, that is a really good example, right? Police brutality reached people in the Imperial Court.
Look at all these slave masters posing on your dollar. Look at all these slave masters posing on your dollar. Look at all these slave masters posing on your dollar. Look at all these slave masters. Hey.
The poor people, presumably of different cultures, must have done something to deserve it, right? And that's part of that myth too, right? That the reason why we get to exploit those people in that other country is because they had the natural resources and they didn't decide to build whole industries which control their government and their entire way of life around those industries, like we did, right? That's what we did. Why don't they also give up all of their freedoms and control over the ability to control the natural resources in your land, right? What those silly backward people in their country? Yeah, it's actually needed each other. Wait. We instituted a horizontal organizational system. We could all call ourselves president, and it would be fine. Yeah, that's true. That is a really good pushback. It could be the case that we could all be president if that position was virtually meaningless. If that position didn't have any of the actual power or control that we understand that position to have. Grew up in the last era of community where we actually needed each other and we knew it. Yeah, that's okay. So that is something that is, I do remember for like, who here remembers neighborhood barbecues, right? That used to actually be a thing. I'm trying to think of a movie that incorporates neighborhood barbecues it's a real phenomenon. When I was a kid, I grew up with neighborhood barbecues where the people in the neighborhood would just organize themselves together and get together and feed everybody and talk about stuff that they wanted to do, right? So far as the neighborhood, and talk about, coming together and knowing each other and watching each other's backs and being there to support each other. That used to be a regular thing that most communities just did on a regular when I was a kid. And it was much, much more frequent even before, right? I've heard the stories. I wasn't there, obviously, before I was born, but the way that life used to be lived for most of the world didn't really the machinations of economics didn't matter. And for the vast majority of human history, national GDP has been completely insignificant. Zero relationship with people's material conditions, people's ability to feed themselves, people's access to goods and services. None of those things had any kind of relationship to national product at all. And still, to this day, that relationship is itty bitty. For the vast majority of people who live, the national GDP does not impact your quality of life, your access to goods and services, your ability to survive. In no way correlates. But we have all been conditioned to understand that we all win when the nation wins. And that's always been bullshit, right? We never get a slice of the pie when the pie gets made, right? We just get baked into it. That's all. Last holiday was with my family. My mother assumed I would play Santa. I rejected and she flew off the hook. That's too bad. I'm sorry she gave you a hard time. I thought beyond philosophy practically. How will I hide my big beard under the second big beard, right? Well, you could get the white powder stuff. I think when you get the chance to read my most recent article, you'll like how I expand the imagination argument I talked about in this one. Excellent. Good. A few years ago, 5, I don't participate in my family anymore. I also really don't. So I really am close with my sisters. I've got 3 sisters. They're very awesome humans, and I love them very much. And all of my sisters have kids, and they are all cool too. So I stay in touch with them, but I have almost no relationship with my parents at all. A year and a half ago, I called and yelled at my mom for about 15 minutes. And then we had a long conversation, an hour or so after that. But mostly it was me just explaining why me calling them racist, homophobic bigots wasn't me just name calling. It's because that's categorically what they are and what they do and how they spend their time. And I don't want to be a part of their lives if that's what they're going to continue to do. So that's where that has stayed. Hey, welcome back, Matt. Good to see you. Don't remember neighborhood barbecues? Yeah, it used to be a pretty common thing. And it was community bonding. But they have built a world now with mobility, starter homes, social media, and now we don't even know the name of our next door neighbor. We cannot even trust our neighbors to send our children trick-or-treating now. 100% malevolent minds. Yeah, absolutely. And let's not forget that we're tying this all back into the article, which we'll get right back to in a minute. But that's exactly a part of this alienization, the alienation. Maybe actually, hold on, right? There is a process by which the government intends, the state, capitalism, intends for us to be alienated, and so I guess alienization isn't an inappropriate word to use there, but we'll try and keep things simple, huh? don't think we should trust anyone with our kids, but that's more with how you train your kids to be aware of adults. Well, and I don't know about that. Too. Yeah, though I'm not sure what you mean by that. And that's going to be off topic. I don't want to pursue that too far, but that's what you mean. Okay, yeah, and that's, I mean, statistically speaking, I can't argue against that at all. That's just true. That's just a true statement. Unfortunately, but the community building, right. So the cell phones, right, and that's what Kamatara is getting to in their article is the advent of cell phones, how they were. Actually, let me. Yes. No, because then I'm going to forget. I'm going to forget one or the other. That's the thing. I'm going to forget one or the other. No, I'm not going to forget that. That's what we're talking about. Right. So let me aside real fast. Let me aside real fast. Yeah, and that's okay. Yeah, that's a good clarification. Boundary teaching, not hiding them away, right? And that's when you said shouldn't trust. There's it's funny. I'm gonna get there. I just got to figure out how to get there. I'm gonna end. I'm not even getting. Hold on. Let me just get there. Okay, so when it comes to we're coming to understand, by we I mean educators, we're coming to understand that you can't protect students from stuff. You can only prepare students for stuff. That's educationally, educators are coming to understand that it's simply not possible for educators to protect their students in any meaningful way, only to prepare their students for the kinds of assaults that they will face throughout their life. That's this, what Matt is talking about is kind of this same kind of thing. There is no way that we get to protect our children, actually, without just building a better society, right? That's the end goal, is we build a better society. I believe if we build a society where we are conditioned to help each other rather than building a society where we are conditioned to treat each other like commodities, in which in a framework in which we must compete to stave off precarity, right? That's the reason why we have a predatory society that abuses children in all of the various ways that we abuse children. And it's not just abuse of children. We abuse. We are abusers. And our society conditions us to be abusers. That's just going to... There is no way that we can protect our kids with a society in which all of those in the society are conditioned to be abusers, which is necessarily the case. Capitalism cannot exist if we are all not conditioned to be abusers all of the time. One of those categorical things. It's almost a truism. It's almost a tautology, right? But it's not a tautology. It just is that way. It is that way categorically. feel the community should make spaces where parents can trust their children with adults for the sake of children and their parents. Well, what I'm getting to, Trash, is that there are ways that we can prepare our children for the kinds of situations that they are going to face. And the only way that we can prepare them for those kinds of situations is if we stop pretending, right? We need to stop focusing on this idea of maintaining some kind of sense of innocence for our children, because that doesn't help them. It's a bad idea that is not good for the children and only makes us liars. It's a bad idea. And instead, we should just be honest with our children about the fact that the internet is full of pornography and people who are going to try to abuse them. And the sooner that we as a society understand that the way that we protect our children is to be honest about those things first off, or build a different kind of fucking society. That's it. There are no other ways, right? We can't make laws about who gets to go into the bathroom or not. That doesn't protect children. We can't make laws about what we do or don't teach in classes. That doesn't protect children. Those solutions are dog shit. Try again. We need to build a mutually based society, right? Where we understand that we all work together and we all need each other to work together to make the society work, right? Right now, we have a society that doesn't work. It's a machine that is just an exploitation machine, and we are running that machine, which is so fucked up. And that's the end of this article. Right, that'll be the main takeaway that I'm going to drive in from this article is that what this article is arguing is that we are all driving an exploitation machine, right? That we are literally doing the exploitation all to each other all of the time. And we do this thing where we go, well, those capitalists, right? We point to the capitalists and our capitalist overlord and Elon Musk and all of these evil people that we want to vilify. No, you are doing the bad thing. All of us. You are doing the bad thing by being a member of society. And it's not your fault. You don't have a choice, because anything that you do to not help the machine by exploiting other people, anything that you do to not exploit other people is turned around on you. You're punished for not doing the exploiting, right? The only way that you can exist in capitalism without exploiting others is to be homeless. Or at least jobless, right? You have to not work a job, and you have to not work with any other people doing any other thing. That's the only way you can exist in capitalism without being an exploiter. Is if you don't buy anything, if you don't sell anything, if you don't make anything, if you don't exchange any goods and services, if you don't participate with anyone in any way whatsoever, is the only way that you can exist in capitalism without exploitation. You buy toilet paper, but that's it. We got to get back to the article. I knew this was good. It's a good aside. When that's why I was sitting back there. I was like, do I want to have this conversation? Yes, I want to have this conversation. This is fucking awesome. You all are awesome. Thank you. And we text. We visited each other, kids in tow today. We text and forget. Yes. Yeah, that's going back to the cell phones are the source of the alienation. That's again, we'll get back to the article in a minute. Having parenting infrastructure would be neat. That's what I want to see, actually. Welcome in, Street Cat Love. It's great to see you. I hope you're doing well. I think that one of the best things that society could do for itself is to communalize childcare, right? And I'm not saying that parents and their children shouldn't have a relationship. I'm not trying to, like The Giver, right? Those of you who have read The Giver, I think that's, I'm not imagining that kind of system. But I think a communal system where rather than us as a culture and society trying to enforce this individualism, because that's where it all stems from, right? You as a parent have your own individual viewpoint, and you don't want the school to program your children with their viewpoint because you want to recreate your viewpoint, right? And this this is part of that necessary relationship of state and citizen, right? To understand these two forces as necessarily antagonistic, despite the fact that the state is comprised of individuals and the individuals make up the state, right? The two things are supposed to be the same thing, actually. But since Mill, probably before Mill, we haven't traced back that just to see how far back it goes back. But at least since Mill, that idea of individualism. You have a dominance-based society right now. Yes, exactly. I should plan room for a playground in my church. That would be amazing community draw. Yeah, there you go. People love playgrounds. Yeah, good. So let's get back to the article. Because I want to tie, well, there was another point that I wanted to tie back in before I went on the aside about the children. Oh, right. So this also has to do with something that I brought up on my last stream, and I meant to talk about this in the very beginning of this stream, and I forgot while I was going over all the other stuff. So a little quick aside is one of the things that I mentioned on last stream was that I am in the process of redoing my online course material to meet certain accessibility standards. And when I was talking about this, I think I glazed it a little bit more than I should have, because I've done some more digging, and some of the, because when I first started talking about this accessibility standards that my school was going to be introducing, the very first thing Jane was suspicious of was, well, if it's a government associated thing, then it's probably not good. And I was like, no, it's not that. Turns out. But there's this, I'm going to try not to take this too long before we get back to the article, but as a quick aside, and this will turn into a longer stream later, I'm going to do a whole stream where I'm talking about accessibility, online accessibility, and the way that we design courses and the way that things are supposed to be so that they can be accessible for people who have certain kinds of needs or accommodation requirements. But so I wasn't entirely mistaken, right? It is the case that the accessibility standards Well, let's. I'll say it this way. It's WCAG, WCAG, WCAG. Is that right? Right. So, yes, Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. The Web Content Accessibility Guidelines were originally invented, or it was a concern raised by a bunch of educators who were in academia, who were concerned about how we would go about citing our sources and having some kind of standard for this, right? The same kind of nerds that care about how you cite things in MLA or APA were concerned about how we were going to start citing electronic sources, right? So that's where this began. And it began in the early 90s as a concern about how we were going to formalize online formatting. And this turned into a discussion on accessibility that transferred over the course of a decade. It ended up in a few different universities. It was a global initiative, actually, initially. But it ended up in a school in, this, I think it probably says it right here on this. It doesn't. But it ended up in a school in the United States. And that's where the thing got formalized into the WCAG 1.0, right? At which point the story takes a turn, right? So it is the case that it is an initiative of educators that was informed by accessibility concerns, and it included people who needed accessibility in the conversation. On universities, with educators trying to come up with formal strategies for educators to figure out how to make things more accessible. It deviates here because it became corporatized. That is, as soon as companies, or as soon as somebody got the idea that this is something we can make money off of, the whole initiative became immediately deeply corporatized. So you have whole companies who have sprung up over the last 20 years, and their sole purpose for existing is to make money off of accessibility standards. And once it became profitable, guess who got involved? The government. So now it has become a federal or national standard that will probably be forced in a very top-down way. Like, my college is doing it because we're trying to stay ahead of stuff, and we are trying to sell ourselves as being accommodating. This is the DEI thing. For those of you who don't know, what colleges do to promote DEI is just make themselves look more appetizing, more enticing. Colleges don't actually spend any money or resources or implement any kind of policies for DEI. That's just not a thing, because actually there's a lot of laws against the kinds of things that you might do. Not just the kinds of conversations that you would have. Quotas and those kinds of things are just illegal. But the thing that my college is doing is this kind of thing. It's PR. Right? It is informed. It's informed by people like me who actually give a shit about their students and students having accessibility. It is initially informed by that. The reason why my college is making a big deal about it and making a big formal process about it is because it's going to make us look more appetizing. It's going to bring students in and put butts in the seat. That's really the bottom line. Yes, and at the end of the day, it's really all just lip service, right? So, and that's it. But when it comes to DEI, women's representation and color representation, it is all just lip service. It really is. But with this, the trying to make things more accommodating for online learning is not necessarily, because I am literally going to do material things, and those material changes that I'm going to make to how I do my course are going to be specifically directed at making the course more accessible to people who have all kinds of impairments or disabilities or obstacles to learning. Eventually, I'm going to make an article on disability and how intertwined it is with class struggle. Notice how many positive structural changes happen after mass disabling events. Two that come to mind is the plague undermined feudalism, and World War II led to a far more social democratic society because war injuries shortened the workforce. Right. Now imagine if we didn't wait until severe mass disabling events and realized disability is a class struggle. Right. Right. What if we just, right? And that's the main takeaway with equity as a goal in general is the idea of equity in education is we want to figure out what's the bare minimum for reaching everyone. How can we make X for everyone? Right? That's the idea. How can we make sure that nobody is excluded? What are the strategies for this? And I love that mindset, right? With the capitalist mindset, we are already in that mode, right? Of a dog eat dog relationship with the world, and that we are vying to stave off precarity, right? And that's something that is integrated into all of our problem solving, right? And this is something that Dr. Fatima talks about in the video too. That this kind of thinking, competitive thinking, that there's only X number of resources, or there's X number of spots, or there's only so many rights to go around, right? This is it's backward thinking, right? If there are ways that we can reorient the problems of society, not about people being problems, but people need help, rather than how is it that these people are not being served by the system? What do we need to do to tweak the system? No, fuck that. Help the people. Start from their needs, right? What do the people need? Fuck the system. Why are we prioritizing the system? The system can go away. We don't need that system. We need the people, right? But let's think about this. What is it that we need? We need the people, right? So let's figure out what those people need, and let's come up with a system, right, that solves those problems, rather than trying to maintain a system that doesn't work for the fucking people. Oh yeah, I gotcha. Huh. Took me a while to figure out where you're going with that, malevolent minds, but yeah, cochlear implant, imposing potentially deadly surgery on children as young as 6 months old, rather than honoring their deafhood or other subculture, or right, or just inventing ways, or reorienting society in a way that doesn't require somebody to be able to hear for them to be able to function in their regular everyday life. Don't use the disability word. I absolutely agree that this is the only culture that anyone can join in anytime. Not the physical condition that disables people. It's not people's physical condition that disables them. It's the misinformed mainstream and the, well, it's so there's, yes, but it is the case that the system is designed specifically to eradicate disabled people too. And that's right. So when we think about systems, there is a disconnect that we have to recognize going on here. What we want are systems that will work for people, and we want those systems to work equitably. The system itself doesn't give a shit about any of that, and specifically doesn't want it to work for everyone. The system specifically needs there to be precarious people, and it needs there to be examples. And disabled people make great examples for capitalism, right? These are the people to whom these are the people that we sacrifice to the god of capitalism. And as a culture, I really wish that we could start to become more honest about this, that we literally sacrifice disabled people on the altar of capitalism. Right? There's a metaphor here. There is a metaphor here, but I'm not using the word literally incorrectly. Right? Just, there is a metaphor going on here, but I'm not using the word literally incorrectly. It is the case that we are sacrificing deliberately. As a culture and society, we are deliberately, knowingly, intentionally sacrificing disabled people for the good of capitalism, right? That's the real takeaway. And the system wants that to be the case. Capitalism wants disabled people to always be that other. That, I mean, we need there to always be an other, and yeah. And it just so happens that this all plays into tropes of white supremacy, right? And to great replacement conversations, and it's almost like it's all related somehow. Glasses, disability. Heartburn, disability. Yup. Well, and I think that right, that one way that we ought to start thinking about this, so what if we could, so what if we could rebrand this a little bit? in the way that we when I'm talking about slavery in the classroom, I don't talk about slavery. I talk about the experience of enslaved peoples. And this turn of phrase, this reframing of the conversation, rather than victimizing, it draws attention to the exploitators, right? Enslaved peoples. What if we could reorient the way that we think about disability? Because it is, as you all are conveying, it's not the fault of people who are disabled. You're born that way, right? It's not your fault, ever. It is the fault of society. It is the fault of a society that sees you as not just expendable, right? Because that's not quite the thing, right? We're all expendable under capitalism, but it's worse than that, right? It's not just expendable. You are you're like the fuel for the machine, right? There are people who get to be the rigid structure of the machine, and you're just the fuel, right? Maybe that analogy doesn't track quite well, but right? I think that there should be a way that we can reorient the language to draw attention to the oppressiveness of the system, of the faults in the system, rather than it being a label that we put on people who are in this category without, right? That nobody chose to be in that category. Nobody wants to be separated from the means of being able to care for themselves, right? But that's what it is. Society has arranged itself in such a way that X number of people are automatically necessarily not going to be able to sustain themselves, not going to be able to take care of themselves. Right? Which is, again, not these people's fault for having been born into a society that is structured that way. It's the society's fault, and the people that continue maintaining that society that way. Yeah, capitalism exploits first those who it perceives cannot fight back. Too bad for them. Gallaudet. This ended up being a very long aside. Gallaudet is a university. Oh, for the education of the deaf and hard of hearing. Oh, that's cool. First, we must undo the brainwashing in mainstream. It is a culture, not a disability. I can do anything you can do, just differently. Right. I mean, that's the thing. And anybody's limitations are the fault of the system. That's exactly the point, right? If the system is equitable, then everybody has access and everybody can do it. Nobody is excluded. And if it's exclusive, right? And that's the last week, and that's the last side I'm going to say before we get back to the article. But when we get to the end of the semester, and I mentioned this at the end of last semester too on stream, when we get to the end of the semester, I'm always really excited for my last discussion board, because it's on exclusionary ethics. it poses the concern of Hardin, who talks about the lifeboat, gives us the lifeboat analogy, and the ruin of the commons, contrasting this exclusionary ethics with Bolding's conception of planet spaceship Earth, right? That rather than it being a lifeboat, or each nation being their own lifeboat and having to worry about their own survival, Bolding's conception puts us all together on the same boat. And for that boat to maintain its staying afloatness, or the spaceship going through space, whichever analogy you like more, for it to maintain itself, we need to learn to work together. All of the nations need to learn to work together, and all of the people in those nations need to learn how to work together. Right? And the main point of the whole essay, the whole point of the week's module, is that either your morality is entirely inclusive and equitable, has to be both. It's not one or the other. It can't be one or the other. It's both, or it's necessarily exclusionary. Right? That's the takeaway from the lesson. And the thing that I'm hoping that students get every semester, that so far I've been mostly disappointed on, is the fact that you live in a world of exclusionary ethics. And if you live in a world of exclusionary ethics, nobody has any rights. Like, that's literally the next logical conclusion. That necessarily follows. It literally is. But I just cannot get students to take that step and to understand. Most 90% of my students write about fucking Nazis in Nazi Germany. Every now and then I get somebody who writes about Mussolini or one of the other fascist regimes, and I'm like, dude, you live in a fascist police state. Right now you live in a fascist police state. Stop pointing to them. Stop pointing back in history. You live in a fascist police state. Fucking wake up! Gods, God. Stop critiquing the past. You're living it. Right now. Anyway, last aside before I get back to the article. Good. We're almost to the end. Let's finish this out. Before I blow a gasket.
This brings me back to ghost towns. It isn't simply the absence of people that turns a place into a ghost town. A wide untrodden savanna does not feel haunted after all. Ghosts appear from residue, not emptiness, existing halfway between presence and absence. I argued earlier that residue comes from life interacting with the world, and no human activity interacts with and changes the world more than labor. A ghost is a piece of life displaced from a life that seems to act independently. This is the exact function of the commodity under capitalism. Because we do not consider the laborer when considering our products, we create our own ghosts. The product becomes a ghostly residue, carrying the worker's life and effort, yet the worker is absent from it. This is why work feels so dehumanizing to so many. You do not feel like yourself at work because the material embodiment of yourself, a residue of your life, is being distanced from you. People don't say they put their blood, sweat, and tears, or heart and soul into a piece of work for no reason. This is not the same as giving something away, like a handmade gift. What's being taken away isn't just the object, but your connection to your own work. The capitalist attempts to obscure the fact that you exist, so that the customer forgets that you exist, alienating you from the fruits of your labor.
And also, I wanted to point out, on the last stream, I think it was the last stream, maybe it was the one before that, I was talking about my own relationship to labor and the ways in which I am actually not so alienated when it comes to relationships of work and labor. I have a lot of privilege, and I am very insulated from a lot of the alienation that most other laborers experience, right? The baker who bakes on an assembly line and packages it up and ships it off somewhere, that baker doesn't see the customer open their product and get the enjoyment from opening it and seeing the presentation and from tasting it. This is something that, right, there's an ineffable, maybe there is a word for this, just not in the English language. There's an enjoyment that you can get from other people's enjoyment. Right? And if for those of you who bake, in general, I think this analogy works really, really quite well. That you put the time and effort into baking a product that isn't just good, it's exceptional, right? If you bake something, you're not just putting in eggs and flour and milk and a little bit of sugar and right. You're trying to think it. Well, okay, I'm gonna try to put in a little bit of allspice and some cardamom, right? I'm gonna really, or maybe some anise, or maybe I'm gonna use extra vanilla, or I'm not gonna use vanilla. I'm gonna use this other. Right? You want to do something that's artful and delightful, something that's good. And when other people go, man, did you put extra? Did you use, right, in those kinds of reactions to your work blow you up in ways that are just indescribable. Welcome in, DJ Che. Well, it's great to have you. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for the raid. So good to see you today. It's my norm. I don't see it as abnormal. My ego demands that I'm good, and by extension, my society is also good. Right. That's something that we've talked about too. Is you don't want to be a part of something that's not good, right? And for a lot of people, especially if they are not basing their analysis of themselves and their relationship to the world on material conditions, if they lack material analysis, then people don't want to be associated with something bad, and so will come up with justifications to not seem bad, or to, right, even if they have to lie to themselves about themselves or the kind of society that they live in. And I think that's very true, that for Americans especially, part of the American dream is pretending that real life doesn't exist. Right, that it's being somewhat detached from reality. I think. But yeah, it's a kind of empathy, right? Where we get enjoyment through other people. And you know, I don't want this to, because it's not just about baking, right? A good when I used to be a painter, was one of the first jobs that I did when I was a teenager, right? I started working when I was 12, actually, but I was officially working for him at 15, or whenever I can officially claim it. But I started working as a painter, painting houses, right? And one of the things that I really enjoyed was driving around town. When I was driving around town, I could point to the houses that I had painted, and I could point out the mistakes that other painters had made that I didn't make on my work, right? I would drive around my town where when I was a kid, right? I'm a teenager. And as a teenager, I would look at and take pride in the work that I had done for other people. And I enjoyed being able to see, right? In over the years and years and years of weather for my work to have held up, and that paint job still looks good, and the caulking isn't cracking, and there aren't any holidays, and it still looks good 5 or 6 years after it was painted. That's something that I took pride in. I cared about it, and I cared about that as much as I cared about getting the paycheck. Right? The feeling good about doing a good job is something that I cared about in the job. One of my favorite things about the job was I got to see, years later, I got to see my good work still being good work, right? And that's a kind of value in my labor that I wasn't alienated from because I was working in a job in my community, helping people in my community. And it was also really nice that the guy that I worked for was a really nice guy and liked to do stuff for people because it was the right thing to do. There were quite a few times where we would go out to finish a job and I wouldn't get paid for it because he wasn't getting paid for it, because the person who hired us couldn't pay us the last $600 or whatever. And it wouldn't matter to my boss, who cared more about the job and the person, right? And we were going to do a good job no matter what the money was, right? And, you know, I'm very grateful for the opportunity to have worked with somebody who cared about other people in that kind of way. The kind of person who would paint somebody's house for some baked bread and some other kinds of goods and services in exchange instead of money, right? Like that's because that's how communities used to function. Is, well, you're short, that's fine. I gotcha. You'll get me next Tuesday. Or, well, don't worry about it. Just, why don't you make me supper and we'll come over and have some supper, right? And we'll call it even, right? That's how the world used to work. Was, well, don't worry about it. We'll just call it even. And that's gone now because there's just so little leeway. Nobody has any spare. Nobody has any extra to give. Nobody has any belt to loosen. I don't know any other good analogies for that. Can point at the house I painted this year. Oh, nice. And all the mistakes I made doing it. Oh, no. Well, and that was the thing. Like, one of the first jobs that I did, that maybe was part of why this kind of thing was instilled in me. It was the very first fence I had ever painted. The first fence I had ever painted. I'd done some other work. And after I painted the fence, I thought it was a good job. And, me and my boss were talking about it. He was like, oh yeah, you finished the fence. It looks all right. And I was like, what are you talking about? That fence looks really great. I did a really good job. And he was like, well, okay, blah, blah. He changed the subject and we were driving around and he drove me by that fence that I had painted, I'd spent 3 days, it's a big fence, 3 days painting the fence, and he drove me around the neighborhood, and there was one perspective that I didn't see, that from that perspective, you could see that I'd missed a whole assload of parts of the fence, right? All of the faces of the boards were perfectly painted, but I didn't get all of the sides on all of the panes. So if you looked down the side, you could see all of the spots that I missed on every single slat. And he was like, look, does that look like it's a really good job? And I was like, oh shit, I'm gonna go repaint this fence. Barn raising parties. Well, it's funny that you mentioned that barn raising parties still happen out here where I am. But I'm in a rural area, and I think that people who live rurally still have to maintain some kind of community. Where I am, it's just not possible to survive out here without help. You know, you might make it for a year and a half, but at some point you're going to be in a situation where without help, you are fucked. So out here, we've got a pretty good sense of community. We do a pretty good job of taking care of each other. We meet regularly for meals. We break bread with each other regularly. We care about each other's birthdays, you know, that kind of thing. It's a big extended family out here where I am, but it's because of where I am, and the fact that we're in the middle of nowhere. There aren't any institutions that are going to come help you. There's no one you can call for help out here. Did a decent job. Had to replace maybe 400 square feet of cedar shake. Then blend that into the rest of the building. Oh, okay, I gotcha. My biggest fails were overspray. Only a few small runs. Probably a bit too thick. Well, it takes practice. If you're using a sprayer, especially, spraying is an art. I painted houses for, let me do the math, about 10 years, actually. No, I guess it wasn't quite. It's probably more like 8 years. I painted houses for about 8 years, and I used a sprayer on probably a handful of jobs, right? Probably less than a dozen over all of the years that I painted. And in most of the cases where I used a sprayer, I'd have to go back and do a whole bunch of extra work because of little runs and little bits of overspray. And from my experience, using a sprayer is not a way to save time or money at all. If you're painting houses, paint the house. Using a sprayer only makes more work, but that's, that was decades ago. This is in the 90s, y'all. So, but maybe spray technology has come a long way since then. I don't really know. I've been spraying those machine tools. Oh, right. I posted in your creative corner, so I had some experience. Okay, I gotcha. Always miss spots. I also always miss spots while spraying. Have to go back, but the finish is very nice. Okay. And maybe I just didn't dedicate enough time and energy to trying to be good at it. And that's, I worked for a really good guy for lots of years. And then the last few years I was painting houses, I was working for this not good guy. He was, he was a drug dealer, and his painting business was just a front anyway. So he didn't give a shit at all about doing a good job, but I still did. It's one of the things that we argued about all the time. We constantly argued, this other guy that I worked for. But one of the things that he kept saying to me was like, you just aren't trying to be good at spraying. If you would take the time to practice and being good at spraying, then you would be good at spraying. But I just hated that dude. I hated working for him. I hated that job. That was not this guy that I worked for, the very first guy that I painted for years. I loved him. Considered him as like a second father. Great relationship. This other guy that I worked for, massive piece of shit. Should have never worked for him. I hope he rots in hell. Can't say enough terrible things about him. Yeah. Yeah, spraying has a lot of rules. Many are sort of hard to... Yeah, it's not something you can figure out. You really need to be formally trained. That guy tried to formally train me, but he wasn't very good at it, right? He was a drug dealer primarily, and the painting business was just a front anyway, so he didn't care about being good at the job. All right, let's finish up this article. We're almost there.
Abandoned towns are called ghost towns because even though the buildings remain, they are estranged from the people that made and maintained them, leaving a spectral residue of labor frozen in glass and steel. Nowadays, ghosts speak. The voices that we hear through many text-to-speech apps are a product of millions of people's vocal labor, often alienated from the people who created it. This is why when one sees their artwork or voice stolen by an AI platform, it feels so damn uncanny. It's like seeing your life happening somewhere else, and you're just watching. As someone who is disabled and relies on text-to-speech, would be very remiss of me to not acknowledge my own usage of artificial voices, and I hope, with everything I use, from my phone to my table to my TV, at least through my acknowledgement, and at most through the abolition of capitalism, they can spiritually reconnect with those who created them. Thanks for reading. If you enjoyed my article, please like and share and leave a comment telling me your thoughts. If you have any good faith critiques or disagreements, I would love to hear them too. Namihi.
I think I really identify with this idea. And in kind of a so there's what I mean is, like, there's the possibility for real people's real labor to really, really mean something to them right now materially. That is what I mean. But also kind of a reconnect. I don't know how to express this. Well, no, I do. I don't. I haven't figured it out, but I am figuring it out. I do know how to express it, I just haven't figured it out yet. What I mean is, right now, well, that's not a good way to start. Well, okay, let's start there, but then I'm going to have to work my way there. Right now, none of us sees ourselves in the products that others make. And we should. Now, I've got to get there, right? We are alienated from our own labor, the things that we make. We are alienated in a lot of ways. Money automatically mediates us. But even if, right, so even if you work closely in your community and with your customers in an intimate capacity, even still, you are alienated from them by the money. And it's not just that there is some other thing that's between your exchange, though that is true, but the relationship around the money is an additional step of alienation, because you need the money to live, they need the money to live, right? So it changes the dynamic of the relationship. It's not just an intermediary. What is the word that I'm looking for? It's not just a go-between. It's not just a go-between. It is a go-between, but it's not just a go-between. It's a go-between that has a whole lot of other stuff, right? Your literal material survival depends on it, right? And so that relationship with the money alienates you from the exchange, right? So it's not just that there's the money and there's something that's in between. That intermediary. Thank you. Thank goodness somebody put the fucking word in chat. Intermediary. It is an intermediary. I don't know why I'm struggling with this word. I knew that's what, thank you so much. I knew that's what the word I was looking for. I just couldn't say it. The intermediary. But that thing that's in between is something that is alienating you from all of your rights. So that's a whole ass other thing before you can even get to the other person, right? You have to overcome the money, and not just the money, but that the money is the threshold which prevents you from accessing things to which you have a natural right. You have a natural right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, except the fact that those things require that you be able to feed and house yourself and clothe yourself and have access to health care, all of which require you have money, right? So you don't have access to any of those rights. That you don't have access to any of your rights is something that is represented by the dollar, which is the intermediary between you. So it's not just that there's something, right? There's a much bigger something. It's not just that there's something in between you. It's a gulf that gets you to understand them as antithetical to your survival, right? We just spent a whole lot of time talking about how societies are built and work because we are working together to make those societies work. That's how societies work. What we have isn't society working, clearly, right? So we are alienated from our own labor, in that there's the money in there that's in between us and the customers and that which we do. But we also don't get to experience the customer. We don't have any real knowledge. Right. We actually don't have any real knowledge about the customer. The other that gets the good in service. Right? We don't know who they are. We don't know how they're going to use it. We don't get to see their enjoyment or lack thereof of the purpose, which is also alienating us in our labor. But again, right, where I'm getting to is we should see ourselves in other people's labor and other people's products. And we don't, because there are even more layers of alienation on top of this, right? Because the person who is making all of the things that you consume, those people don't know you either. They're not making products for you. They're just making products. Endlessly, pointlessly, right? And you recognize this when you go to the store and buy a plunger. That plunger isn't for you. When you go to the store and you buy a cake, even if you ask the baker at the cake to put a little bit of icing on the top and to say happy birthday, whoever, they're not making it for you. And you know that. They're making it for the dollar. And that's why would we be surprised by the reality that our economy doesn't serve us? That we keep inventing new technologies, and rather than those technologies making our lives easier and more convenient and more efficient, they seem to only add to the work, add to the complication, add to the difficulty of survival. Right? And it's because nothing that is being designed for you. Everything that is being designed or made or produced or manufactured are being made for the dollar. Ends up being one of the arguments I have about worker unions in a far-flung future. It creates its own membrane between consumer and producer. Unions, a good tool now, though. Yes. And this is I've been getting more into Paracon, and I brought this up a few weeks ago, and I couldn't remember whether it was Schweikert or if it was the other one. Now, and it just emptied out of my brain. Let me go. That's not the best way to. PowerPoint. That over there. Let's see what happens. Yeah, that looks okay. All right, yeah. Schweikart and Alpert. It is okay. I didn't want to. I was almost said Alpert. Where's Schweikart begin? Okay, Schweikart. Okay, so I brought this up a few weeks ago on stream, and I couldn't remember between Schweikart and Alpert which one was for markets and which one was against markets. Schweikart is for markets. He thinks that we can re-envision the way that capital moves and functions in society by making all capital publicly owned, right? That if we make the choice of investment up to committees of workers, rather than waiting for rich people to get around to deciding that they want to invest in something. That if we make capital public investment, then we can use markets to basically accomplish socialism. That's really a terrible explanation of what Schweikert's trying to argue. So read the book. But that's generally what Schweikert thinks, is that we can reorganize economies and keep the markets. Alpert is going to, like lots of Schweikert's ideas, but rejects markets entirely. Markets aren't a little bad or even just very bad in some contexts. Instead, in all contexts, markets instill antisocial motivations in buyers and sellers, misprice items that are exchanged, misdirect aims regarding what to produce in what quantities and by what means, misremunerates producers, introduces class divisions and class rule, and embodies an imperialist logic that spreads itself throughout economic life. I agree with this. Right? I think that Schweikert is on to a lot of really great ideas and has a bit, some of their critiques of capitalism are just amazing. But I think that a dependence on markets is a mistake. Why did I bring this up? Why did I start talking about this? Because Trash was talking about unions in Paracon. Paracon, I think, is the next better thing than unions, right? Having participatory economies. And with Alpert's vision, we do away with markets. We are no longer depending on markets or the invisible hand of the whatever to regulate supply and demand. We just ask consumers what they want and then produce that. Right, instead of depending on the invisible hand and some, hoping that our predictions about how the models are supposed to work, which all economists who have done any studying on anything at all regarding economics know models don't tell you fucking shit about the real world, right? Because that's if we're depending on markets, we are depending on using models to organize and plan those markets in whatever kind of planned economy we dream up. And Schweikert does envision in their future, it is kind of a planned economy, but it's a planned economy that's balanced by markets. With Alpert's vision, it's not balanced by markets, it's balanced by us talking to each other, but by us having conversations with each other, between the consumers and the producers, having conversations about what they want, right, and their expectations, and right, it just seems like that kind of makes sense. Parrot Con. So many talking birds in one Hilton. That's what. Oh no, Curse Chaos. Jane, I might have misspoke there. We're not making capitalism public. We're making capital. The idea that Schweikart has. Okay, so it's the problem is one of the main problems that Schweikart is addressing is the hypermobility of capital. So the where is it explained best? Keynes. Let's go to This is from Keynes. Actually, this quote is from an author named Chernomas, who does a good job of making Keynesian economics accessible to people who aren't economics nerds. So this is coming from Chernomus, but it's Chernomus giving us Keynes's conception. Because renters and speculators control over the investable product, their lower propensity to consume and the uncertainty of investment, the rich inhibit consumption, thereby dampening investment speculations and in turn the possibility of employment, income, and consumption for those with higher propensities to consume. So in Schweikart's model, the kinds of investment that right now the whole market depends on Elon Musk or whatever other rich people decide to take it upon themselves. Instead, we, the public, decide what kinds of public projects we want. And then we just come up with the money for those public projects, right? The relationship with capital becomes something that we are in control of. That and in theory, that the people or the workers have the ability to direct the investment into companies and into research and development and into medical research. That's one of the things that would be most obviously benefited by this kind of framework, is that rather than having pharmaceutical companies who want lifetime customers, we would reorient our research and development in the medical industry to solve problems, right? And that's one of the shifts that we get immediately from this kind of framing. Even with markets being as fucked up and exploitative, and I believe Alpert is right, as alienating as markets are, even with a market system, if the public could have some kind of control over capital investment, that is, the allocation of huge amounts of money and resources to solve problems. If the public had some kind of actual democratic control over how capital is spent, then Schweikart argues, then we would be able to solve a lot of the problems that are inherent in capitalism. How about we just do the things without an intermediary? Yeah, and that's yes. That's Pericon. In general. So I am kind of summing up Alpert's work kind of roughshod too. We'll do an expanded stream on those ideas at some point, but that's not on the map for now. The next thing that I wanted to get to. So okay. So what I'm going to do, because I need to use the restroom, I'm going to leave y'all with some music. Good, that's plenty of music. But I want to figure out how I'm going to leave the music with. Because I also want to have the other thing up. No, I'm not going to worry about it. We'll just do this. For those of you who don't know Mitnerd, please go follow my friend Mitnerd. They are awesome. They are a leftist bard. That's what they use to describe themselves. And when it comes to bards in parties, I would party up with this bard. That's all I'd have to say about that. So we're gonna leave you with a little bit of music from Mitnerd. I'm gonna use the restroom, and then after I come back from the restroom, we'll talk about that thing that you all can't see. Leftist perfectionism. That's where we're going. I'll be right back. Nobody go anywhere. I should also be right back.
Hey Zots, hey Trashcan. Don't think I'm going to make it to Bricks and Molly's this week, so here is my version of the Loi Police. I tried to add a few bricks to it for y'all. Travel North America, you'll see it everywhere. Police kill with impunity, politicians don't care. Whether in a bed or in police custody, pretend a human's criminal, kill them, get off scot-free. Cops who self-investigate their murder-happy gang are magically not guilty no matter whose kids they hang. Some won't call it lynching, but it is, that's clear to see on the badges of the slave patrols, excuse me, the police. Hey, the Loi Police means the same thing now as yesterday. Out of our houses into the streets, everybody say, fuck the police. Sandra Bland pulled over by a Texas pig named Brian. Said he was in danger, grand jury said he was lying. The coward pointed weapons while he'd sputter and he'd choke, screaming, I will light you up, because she kept her smoke. Then she died inside a cell where footage went away. A suicide with no real proof, just what the piggies say. Trooper Encenia was set free after he lied. No prison time or punishment, so what, that lady died. The cops investigate themselves and say there's nothing shady, when clearly all those racist pigs just murdered that nice lady. Hey, the Loi Police means the same thing now as yesterday. Out of our houses into the streets, everybody say, fuck the police. Daniel Shaver did everything that the weakling screamed, then Philip Brailsford murdered him to sate a power dream. Charles Langley gave the order that they murder Shaver. Now we're paying both their pensions, acting like it's braver. Brailsford had a history of beating up teenagers. A Punisher skull on his gun, the swastika comes later. But none of this was even entered in his murder trial, so a jury let him off scot-free, bootlicking in style. Hey, the Loi Police means the same thing now as yesterday. Out of our houses into the streets, everybody say, fuck the police. Freddie Gray in Baltimore was tortured by his killers. Pigs named Nero, Goodson, Porter, Rice, and White and Miller. They bounced him round a metal box and said that he was naughty, then stopped the van so they could shackle his unconscious body. The officers got off scot-free, they're still working today. Where they're working, communities never will be safe. In the US, lynching's been illegal for a time, but when the police do it, we pretend it's not a crime. Hey, the Loi Police means the same thing now as yesterday. Out of our houses into the streets, everybody say, fuck the police. People fawn at law and order, ignoring the cops who kill whenever they feel like it. Killing never stops. Then we pretend we should believe a word these gunmen said, while they keep lynching, raping, shooting, piling up the dead. The politicians give police big weapons for a war. We try to move their funding and they kill us even more. If there were ever good police, they're lynching helpers now. Neighborhoods are safer where police precincts burn down. Hey, the Loi Police means the same thing now as yesterday. Out of our houses into the streets, everybody say, fuck the police. Hey, the Loi Police means the same thing now as
Mitten Nerd is absolutely a treasure. That's true. Good. I did put the link for that in chat, so but I didn't put it over here in YouTube. So there you go. If you're not already following Mitten Nerd, there's the link.
Fuck the police! Let's take control! We gotta take it back! Everyone get up and let's go!
I love that that alert. Hey, and this is a good time to give a shout out for Street Cat Love. Everyone, if you are not already following Street Cat Love, please go follow them because they are fantastic. It's more than just cute cats over there. So they do also have cute cats. Oh, I should shout out DJ Che as well because they gave me a raid. And they are also an awesome streamer. Go check them out. ACAB does include tone policing, but I'm so glad that you said that. Right, so when it comes to policing leftist spaces, is that even an appropriate thing to do? Oh, thank you. We don't want that to be. Does the term have use in leftist spaces? Right? This is actually a real concern. Does this term at all have any place being used in leftist spaces? Right? Do I have the right to police? Or am I the kind of body which should be policed? Right? And there's some ideas that I'm trying to come to terms with here, right? There are certain kinds of behaviors. Well, okay. Let's think about it this way, right? So I want to begin from the wrong place this time. Let's begin with the conception of what the police are supposed to be, quote unquote. The reason, the justification for police is that they are necessary for maintaining society. That we want society, and we want that society to be persistent. This has to do with so there's a bit of existentialism here in like an existential crisis, existentialism, in that at some point adults recognize that they will no longer be around to make the world as they would like it to be. And those people create structures within society so that the way that they think things ought to be becomes systematized by the society, and that person doesn't have to be there to recreate the things that they would will that society be like. That's how societies work. That's what societies are. Societies are a bunch of people in this generation who are clinging to a bunch of ideas from the previous generation and then forcing the next generation to maintain those same ideas. That's what society is, right? And at some point, these people change their mind about some of past ideas, and some of the younger people rebel enough that there are changes to society. That's what society is. That's how it works historically, functionally. And the role of police is to be the stalwart maintainers of that society that recreates itself that way over and over and over again. The idea is that the police are there so that when there's deviance, when people act in ways that would change society in significant ways, that the police are there to push them back into place. That's part of the myth of police, is that there is a good way for society to be, and that police prevent people who would be outliers from pushing society in directions that aren't good. That's the myth, right, of policing, is that they are there to maintain some kind of order which persists beyond our individual fleeting existences. Right, that's that. Their supposed functions are twofold. First is they're supposed to protect you, right? This is the other myth, is that the reason why they exist is to protect society, and they're there to protect you, right? When your rights have been violated. These are the myths about what policing is, or what it's supposed to do, what it's supposed to be. None of these things are true about what police do. Police protect capital and insulate the people in charge from accountability. That's what police do. That's it. They have no function in society above that. So police are there to protect capital and to protect those who are in power from accountability. That's what police do, right? Not the myth. We're talking about the myth. But even with this mythologized idea, is even this valuable, right? We understand that police fucking suck, and what they do isn't good for us. What police do as a function is prevent us from having freedom. Quite literally. That is what they do, is interfere with our ability to advocate for ourselves on our own behalf what our own rights ought to be. Because that should be our right to do. We don't have the right to do that because if we try, police show up and brutalize us. Right? Because that's part of them protecting the people in power from accountability. Right? It's because racists are terrified of being racist without someone to threaten the lives of the victims. That's actually true. I'm not sure if it's going to be super relevant in regards to philosophy, but on my Substack, I'll be talking more about New Zealand history. That's good. Next one's going to be the history of the Red Scares. Aotearoa. Aotearoa. I probably butchered that word, I'm sorry. Our most recent was in 2008. Wow, that's very recent, with nationwide police raids against anarchists and Mana Mautuhake Maori. Huh. Mautuhake, probably. Mautuhake. Another example was the assassination of the U.S. President William McKinley in September 1901 by the anarchist Leon Sloz. I'm butchering that name too. Sparked the calls of the New Zealand press to exterminate anarchists. Wow. We're going to have policing. This function should be community controlled. Aotearoa. Aotearoa. Okay. Good. Thank you for that. I appreciate you adding the clarification too in the context and the thanks. I appreciate that, Kamatar. If we're going to have policing, this function should be communally controlled. 100%. And that's the other thing. There's another thing that should be on this list, I think, but I didn't put it on here because it is a no-brainer that if there's going to be some kind of thing that we're okay with in our leftist spaces, that thing wouldn't be done by some appointed organization or group or committee or anybody that was above at all. It would have to be horizontally managed. 100% agree with that, Jane. But the question then is, do we have a conception of the good? Right? If we're taking this analogy from the supposed things that the police are supposed to do in a society, right? If we're taking that model and transferring it over to our leftist spaces, do we have a conception of the good around which we can coalesce some kind of formal structure that we would say, okay, this is what we need, and we need to not deviate from that. That's I think one of the first questions that leftists should be asking themselves. Can we establish some kind of the good? Which I doubt that we can. Right? I'll just be upfront about that. Somebody who is an ethicist and who deals with concepts of good and evil and right and wrong as contrasting each other. No, we are not going to be able to come up with a conception of the good. Or if we do, it will necessarily be bad. Or if we come up with some kind of conception of the good, it'll be too limiting. It'll be exclusionary. It won't be adaptive. It won't be good. It'll be too rigid, right? And I think that we've talked about some of the difficulties with rigid structures in with regard to problem solving in general, right? Rigid structures don't do well at problem solving. Rather, what structures do is they reorient the problem so that it doesn't become a problem for the structure. It just gets subsumed into it generally. And that's another, I guess on the next stream, I might just watch that video essay from Dr. Fatima because it keeps coming back up. It won't stop coming back up. But it's really good. So I think that might be worth it. We'd have to ask ourselves, what is our goal for society? Right. So in this, now we're starting to talk about our telos. So, and that's, we have to ensure that we've got means and unity in mind and a telos in mind for this whole project. 100%, Jane. I think that is where we are, right? As we have to ask ourselves, what is the goal? What is our goal? Well, we have to iron out a few things, right? What is our immediate goal? And what is our goal for society? I guess our kind of part, well, our immediate goal is the strategy. And the long-term goal is the telos. And we have to talk strategy. And this is part of the strategy plan, right? and I would like for us to be very prepared, to be able to challenge the ideas of each other. Maybe that's what this project is about. Ooh. Maybe I'm interested in expanding the ways in which we are able to challenge the ideas of each other without it being a problem. Right? Because, and there's a few things that are inherent in this idea of policing, right? You police a problem, or you police deviance. And one of the things that we've talked about in this space an awful lot is the fact that difference is how we problem solve. That's actually the best mechanism, the best tool in our toolkit for problem solving is difference, is the ways that we are different and the way that we understand the world differently. If we can tap into that power, then we become much better problem solvers. But that requires that we have the kind of space wherein all of the people in that space feel not just that it's okay for them to say something, like not just that they're allowed to say something, but they should be incentivized and encouraged. They should feel compelled to want to say something, not because somebody is compelling them, but because they want to, they understand that they have power to make the world a better place by changing people's mind, and they want to make the world a better place because they want the world to be a better place. And that's why they're advocating for what they're advocating for, right? We have to match variety with variety. Yes, absolutely. And right now, I think that we don't have spaces where people feel like their differing viewpoints are valued. That's Twitch is terrible about this too. One of the things that I see happen an awful lot on Twitch, for better or worse, right, is where a streamer will see one comment from one chatter, and based on that one comment from the one chatter, ban. Right out the gate. No conversation, no warning. And the first thing that I want to say about this is it is important for leftists, for people in general, to be able to protect their own spaces and to protect the people in those spaces. And a lot of bans that happen very quickly, the bans happen quickly for that reason. I'm not going to allow that transphobic language. I'm not going to allow that clearly racist dog whistle. I'm not going to allow you to use that gendered sexist language. I'm not, right? And these knee-jerk reactions that leftists have, it's pretty valuable, right? It's in okay, so now I guess I should ask, is that policing? Right? If well, and let's keep the example specific, right? Streamers, let's say leftist streamers, so-called, who call themselves leftist streamers, banning people in their from their streams, people who use ableist language or sexist language or racist language or other kinds of, right, transphobic language. Is that policing, or is that something else? And that's I kind of, I think, what I want to suss out is is there any value to this idea at all? Is it good for organizations, for systems, for societies, for communities? Is it helpful for there to be mechanisms by which, well, no, that's not how I want to finish that question. I'll look what you guys are starting to say. And a model is much more. Wait, this is one KF. One of the reasons I seek an intentional community. It seems a small group could go a long ways on modeling a different way. Yes, much more easily than one person trying to hash anything out. Right, and that's first and foremost. I don't have any answers here, right? And that's I think it's good for me to out the gate say I don't have any plan. I don't have any idea. I'm not trying to teach you all anything. I'm hoping to learn here about this because I have some ideas around policing, but a lot of the ideas have, for many years, actually been very conflicting. Generally, I think that all cops are bad in all forms, right? That I'm not conflicted about that. Let me be clear. But this idea that there might be value to a group of people being able to and that's the thing, I don't know how to finish that sentence. That's the thing. What is it that's the good? What is it that's the that I think could be I don't know. Policing would be ethical if it were consensual. Maybe. In a model system, there is room for folk to consent or leave. Like I would consent not killing folk if they did too. Seems friendlier that way. Well, but here's the problem. The nature of policing as we understand it cannot be the kind of thing that people under the system can be able to opt out of. That cannot be part of the system. Because then that defeats the purpose of them in the first place. If I can just say, oh well, I don't want the police I don't want to be accountable right now. I choose to opt out because I've committed a crime, or I choose to opt out because, right? Community policing alternatives in the Black community are essentially neighborhood patrols. They know everybody, and if there's an issue, they'll find the person's peers and family to help remediate the situation. They never find a reason to call the cops. Right. But they don't call it policing. Usually, and correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, but I in a lot of these situations where communities are taking care of themselves, they specifically use different language, unless I'm wrong. And I would like to know, right, what kind of language, right? Because when the Black Panthers were doing this kind of thing, it was anti-policing. What they were doing in their communities, I think, is a language some of them used, was they were doing the opposite of what police did, which was going around and doing welfare checks and making sure people were actually safe and well cared for. The opposite of what police actually do, right? But this is good, right? This is a good thing that communities can and should do for themselves. And this is something that I've talked about over and over and over again on my stream, is that the existence of a class of people whose job it is to intercede on your behalf for literally everything, right? You are not allowed to self-help. This is a very important legal premise. Under no circumstances, legally, under no circumstances are you legally permitted to appeal to self-help. You must appeal to the state, i.e. the police or the courts, and if the police or courts won't help you, then you don't have a right, right? But that we have this institution of policing gives people the impression that they don't need to be responsible for morality in their community. We have an organization of police. It's their job to maintain the morality of community, which is part of the myth, right? Because they don't. But that is part of the myth. That's part of the reason why people believe that police exist. And this absolves them of their personal responsibility as members of their fucking moral community to do something about injustices and wrong things that happen in their moral community, right? They absolve themselves because there's a whole group of people whose job it is to do that, right? And this breeds not just apathy. It's worse. It's worse than apathy. It's that we simply don't care about other people in our community, their well-being, their justice, their rights, or how those things end up being maintained. As long as nobody's interfering with me, why would I give a shit about anything else? Right? I'm not incentivized because it's literally illegal for me to help my neighbor, right? If my neighbor's boyfriend is trying to break down her door so he can physically abuse her, and if I intercede, guess who's legally at fault? Right? Why? Why would I put myself in harm's way to protect my neighbor when it's literally against the law for me to do so? And it's no wonder that our societies are the way that they are. It's because policing as an institution creates this ideological excuse to not care, and which is constantly reinforced by the fact that caring is illegal. Add public safety, paramedics and behavioral health professionals, traffic guides, and process services. We can eliminate cops, right? And that's the defund the police argument. But see, here's the thing. Instead of me just jumping right on, let me actually unpack the defund the police thing, because it is not the case. Everybody here knows, but for new viewers, the one who isn't a regular viewer who's in the viewer count right now, or anybody who's watching the VOD on this later, right? Defund the police is not about taking money away from the police because police are useless. I mean, they don't do their job. They don't prevent crime. They don't protect anybody. Anyway, the whole point is we take the money and instead give it to medical professionals and to mental health professionals and to build community gardens and to build shelters for people to have a place to sleep, right? That's what we should be investing that money in. Because if we were investing that money instead of a force of people to brutalize the population, if we just invested in the community and infrastructure and in making people's lives better, crime would go down naturally anyways. We fucking know this. We know this. We have the studies. We have the quantifiable evidence. The thing preventing that quantifiable evidence from being manifest into real life is the myths which persist about policing, that they're supposed to protect us and that they're supposed to maintain the society, the good things about society. Yeah, defund the police was a live version of abolish, right? Which that's another good point, Matt, and I should also unpack that further part. Because the answer is no police, right? That is actually the right answer. In the same way that no prisons is the answer, and anything short of abolition is more oppression, and probably only going to further entrench those systems. Actually, right now, and that's the thing, when it comes to defund the police, that is an initiative that I would get behind, because we are talking about some kind of change that would translate into making people's immediate material conditions better. It's one of those kinds of things, right? It's the short term. I recognize that there are comrades whose material conditions will be benefited by this defund the police initiative, which really was in. I don't even want to get into the weeds of it, but it was everything about the defund the police initiative has only backfired for everyone. Actually, as a liberal idea, that the Democrats did what they have done with defund the police has been worse than a catastrophe. It really they screwed the pooch on that one, because in all of the major cities, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but I'm not going to let it go now. But in all of the major cities where there were initiatives, grassroots initiatives, and people talking about defund the police, what happened in all of those cities is that somebody got elected into some kind of position to defund the police, and they didn't. But we have a whole bunch of social media hoopla about all of the defunding the police that's happening in these cities, which didn't happen. And now all of the media outlets are looking at the crime in those places, and it's not getting any better. It's getting worse. And it looks like these budgets are still over the top because they pumped more money into it instead of defunding the police. In literally all of those fucking places. The only places where the police were actually defunded were in cities that, all before anybody was beginning the defund the police conversation, cities where they were already had initiatives planned, and they were just reallocating funds, and in those places things worked out really well. And nobody knows anything the fuck about them because they weren't part of the media hoopla where all of the elected officials were running on their campaign, where they were trying to get reelected into their Democratic positions so that they could not defund the police after having ran on that platform. In literally all of the cities where all of the people who ran on that platform literally didn't do it. I mean, maybe I'm wrong about one of those places, but I'm pretty sure I'm not. I'm pretty sure every major city where a politician ran on a defund the police ticket, in every one of those cities, the police were not defunded. I believe that is a true statement. And I'm referencing for that. I'm referencing a second thought video that I watched on it. Or maybe it was a first thought. I can never keep up between those two channels because it's the same guy. Right? It's that person with that voice. It's that person who does first thought and second thought, that channel creator. Anyway, crime stats are created by cops. They have bias on the data. Right. Often cops are the biggest expense and have immense control over town politics. Right. The largest expense for most cities in the United States, their largest expense is policing. I could get behind defund at the ballot, but if people are proposing, I'm pushing back, and it's not. I'm going to be effective. It's not going to be effective because cops still exist. Right. Yeah, and I would agree with that take. And that's, I would probably try to take a principled take like that too, where even if I was supporting it on some kind of ticket or platform, I would also make sure that was part of my consent, was that I also dissented, right, with the overall idea of policing. But yeah, crime stats are created by the police. And this is something that when I found this out, as an undergraduate, I just could not believe it. I thought when I started digging into what brought me to that conversation. It was a conversation on black crime. I got into an argument with somebody on a college campus about black on black crime. And so I was like, well, I'm going to go become an expert on crime statistics. And I did. I learned a whole lot. And one of the first things that I learned was that you can't trust crime statistics at all, because it's all bullshit. All of the data. So in case if this is news to any of you, hate to break your cherry, all of the crime data collected by the Department of Justice, the federal organization whose job it is to oversee crime and punishment in the United States. When the DOJ collects crime statistics, they request from each police precinct that they report their crime statistics. Every single year, as far back as I looked, right? Every single year, as far back as I researched, the DOJ's report includes statements stating that they know the data that they are using is incorrect, is made up. The DOJ is fully aware, right, that they request from police precincts that they report their crime statistics. They do, and when the DOJ gets their crime statistics, they go, yeah, this is bullshit. Every fucking year, year after year after year after year, this is part of the DOJ's report on crime statistics, includes caveats that all of the statistics included in the report are really just made up numbers that precincts felt like reporting. And they can report whatever they want to. And now, with the understanding that police precincts can and do just make up crime statistics, think about how messed up it is that crime statistics indicate that police are systemically racist. Now, this is what they are reporting. if you look at the raw numbers reported by the police precincts, policing is systemically racist. By the numbers that they are reporting, which we know are inaccurate, which we know are bullshit, which we know are way, way, way worse. Way worse. What aren't they reporting? Right, and when it comes to rape statistics, when it comes to other kinds of things, police precincts, each precinct can just report whatever it wants to. They look like inept failures by the numbers that they choose to report. How bad is it really? Saw a couple good crime studies. Was in another chat. Brought up the wealthy folk shoplift more than the poor folk. They challenged, so I was digging around. Found that one from a few years, but also found a survey that says 100K folk are twice as likely to cheat self-checkout than 30K folk. I think those were the numbers. Survey was self-report. Wow, interesting. Even self-reporting. But I mean, I guess that tracks. Actually, people that are working class. I mean, even though we're alienated from each other, right? We are alienated in a lot of ways from each other, but the working class has some kind of understanding that somebody's getting screwed when you're right. When and it's actually part of a myth too. When you steal, that this is increasing the prices for everyone, that's bullshit. That is completely a myth. Capitalists don't care about a few stolen things here and there. That doesn't affect their bottom line. They don't actually care. The internal theft is much more of a concern for capitalists because 40% of their profits actually ends up getting subsumed by anyway. Just throwing a number out there that it's not a meaningless number, but it is. I didn't pull that number out of my ass, but it is a meaningless number, so I'm not going to defend it. Settlement bias versus risk analysis. Yeah. And that I think that actually I didn't think about that too, but risk analysis, because anybody who's working class knows that the risks are high, that police are just looking for an excuse to put you in jail or to fine you or to make your life hell. And if you have a lot of money, that's not a problem, right? If you have a lot of money, whatever, you're just going to be in handcuffs for 5 minutes. Someone's going to say something to you that you're probably not going to want to hear, but then your lawyer is going to deal with all the rest of the details, right? You don't have to actually worry about anything. It's not like there are consequences for your actions. You're rich. I mean, come on. You could traffic humans and get away with it. Come on. Look at the society we live in. Who cares if you shoplift? So let's see. Right. So I wasn't planning to really solve this. I was throwing some ideas out here because I want you all to start thinking about these kinds of things too. Is this right? So there's two primary concerns that I want to walk away from. One is I want to continue talking about policing as it's termed, and juxtaposing the myth of policing with the reality of policing and trying to figure out if there's anything good there, right? But that's kind of a different conversation than leftists or leftist spaces ought to be a kind of way. ... Right? And what comes after that involves that we do something. Right? It means that we have to do something about that. But what is that? And is that policing? Or is that a different thing? And that's what I'm trying to work out, right? Is that I think that we, as people who think that leftist spaces ought to exist, right? The kind of people who believe that leftist spaces ought to exist believe that those spaces ought to exist in some kind of way. Whether or not you realize you have those kinds of inclinations, you probably do have an idea of, well, that is the way that a leftist space should be. That's not the way that a leftist space should be. Okay, with this conception, what do we do about making leftist spaces that way? And is what we do to make leftist spaces that way, is that policing or is it something different? That's what I'm trying to work out. Is the question, how should we handle bigotry in left spaces? A large part of it, yes. Yes, a very large part of what my concern is exactly that, Jane. But not just bigotry, right? How should we handle people who are engaging in praxis that we don't think is beneficial or practical, right? Right. What if somebody's not being bigoted, but we know somebody who is a leftist content creator, and that leftist content creator is platforming fascist ideas? What do we do? Right? Do we dogpile this person? Do we all go into their community and express how much dislike we have for that activity? Are there supposed to be consequences? Do we revoke their leftist card? Like, what the... right? What are we supposed to do? And is the thing that we are supposed to do, is that policing? Or is it something else? And, right? But, so yes. The other thing that I expected that we were going to deep dive into ideologentity, the word that I just made up here. Right. And part of what I'm really trying to focus on here is we've spent a lot of time talking about identity. In fact, we've spent whole streams talking about identity. And in a lot of the conversations that we've had so far, it's been acknowledged that identity is somewhat fluid, right? That it's something that isn't static. But I think that I'm coming to understand ideology in a different way. And I'm just not sure what that way is yet. So we're going to leave it there. More or less, probably approach them in private, individually at first, to make sure it wasn't just a mistaken action or innocent-ish step. Well, and okay, so in that case, Trash Demancer, what if they get mad at you? Right? What if you're trying to quietly and discreetly bring something to the attention of a streamer, and in response, what they do is they hop on stream and they make it a big scene, and they talk about you and how you are punching left and you are undermining their leftist movement and you are slapping the face of everybody in their community, right? Unspeakable way. Well, okay, so Jane, I love you because that's such a good question. That is good. So the problem, the problem is so a week ago, I would have had something sure to say in response to that question, Jane. If you had asked that question a week, maybe more than a week. If you'd asked that question more than a week ago, I probably would have had a confident answer to give you. But I'm kind of rethinking some of the ideas that I've previously held about identity in general. And I believe that I'm completely rethinking ideology. Which is... So I don't have a good answer for that. That's where we're going. And I'm not sure what the next few streams are going to be with regard to that, but I think that's where we're going to go. Within the next few streams, and this might have to do with you all too. If there are ideas that you all have about the things that we've talked about on stream today, put them in Discord, please. That would be so super helpful. Because really, I'm kind of at a loss for what direction to go. Or what line of reasoning to follow, what kind of frameworks to look at. I'm not sure how to get started on thinking about some of these things. But thankfully, I'm much less stressed with school stuff, so I'll actually have some ability, some time, for me to be able to mull some of these things over. And then, actually, now that I think about it, my plan, tentatively as of just a few moments ago, is what I'm going to do on the next stream on Friday, which should work without interruption. I don't think I have anything going on. I'm going to work out tomorrow and then go to the grocery store tomorrow, so nothing should interfere with Friday's stream. I think on Friday I would like to go over this. I think I would like to dedicate the stream to a conversation about leftist perfectionism, policing versus whatever else, other concept or the other thing, whatever that is that's not policing, that is also how communities protect themselves or itself. Right, and that's something else that needs to be worked out. Anyway, so I'll probably flesh out this outline that I've flashed at you all several times today. Fill in a lot more stuff on this outline, and then go over that outline thoroughly on stream on Friday, I think is what I'll want to do. But who knows? I might change my mind. My preliminary thoughts are that ideology is more fluid than identity, but identity is still very much fluid. And my initial thoughts would be the opposite. I think that I believe that one comes to understand themselves as an identity only within an ideology. And that at some point, when this relationship breaks down, because it does, and we'll get into that, that the ideology has to expand to include other ideas, and this expanding of the ideology in turn changes or has a profound impact upon the identity of the person who has come to have their identity within that ideology. Is my initial impression of the two. But I'm not concretely adhered to any of that. It might be that we have an identity and come to understand ideology through the lens of our identity, which then would become its own kind of ideology as a result of that self-reflection. Well, only insofar as it was, well, okay. We'll expand upon this. There's a lot more left to go, but my brain is tired and I need to wrap it up. So that's what I'm trying to do. But good. I like your preliminary thoughts, and keep yeah, good. Everything alive is ever changing. Heck, on a molecular scale, even metal changes shape constantly. That's a really good visual too. Not visual, but analogy that might translate well into metaphor. Good. Let me find a raid target. Let me get out of here. This has been a great stream. And it wasn't a short stream, but it wasn't really a very long one. 4 hours is still pretty long. By standards. Oh, good one. Oh, it's been a while since I've been on. All right, focus, self. This is somebody that I haven't rated into before, I don't think. But I like them. I've enjoyed being in their space. They're watching Tucker Carlson, which might not be the most mentally healthy thing to jump into, but we can't change our material conditions by ignoring them. So the issues with trying to make perfectly flat surface, some molecule will just pop out of place. Right. Actually, it's quite literally true. Let's go give some love to Frank Embry. They're a comrade. I've always enjoyed watching their streams every time I've watched their stream. Yeah, let's do this. Good. So again, we're on for Friday. I expect it's going to be probably about as long as this stream was. I don't know. My mind is still a little bit reeling. It's and that's another reason why I want to cut it here is a lot of the ideas that we've talked about I would really like to marinate on. That's how I think is by sitting and marinating on stuff for a while. But anyways, I love you all so much. I appreciate you so much for being here. I don't have time to say all your names now because I waited too long, but until the next time I see you, be excellent to each other.